तो एक अंग्रेजी कहावत है कि व्हेन लाइफ गिव्स यू अ लेमन यू मेक अ लेमनेड आउट ऑफ इट। बिल्कुल वैसे ही जैसे ज़िंदगी हर किसी को एक दूसरा मौका देती है, अपना भूतकाल वापस दोहराने के लिए नहीं, बल्कि आत्मविश्वास और दृढ़ता की मजबूत कलम से एक नया हिस्सा अपनी ज़िंदगी को लिखने का मौका देती है। हेलो एवरीवन, माय नेम इज़ कौस्तुभ भारद्वाज एंड वेलकम टू अनफिल्टर्ड बाय कौस्तुभ। अनफिल्टर्ड बाय कौस्तुभ में स्वागत है मिस्टर अशोक बंसल जी का।
बहुत शुक्रिया कौस्तुभ।
बहुत शुक्रिया इस कॉन्वर्सेशन में हमारे साथ आने के लिए।
ये तो ऐसा हुआ कि ना जान ना पहचान, मैं तेरा मेहमान। जब हम कौस्तुभ से पहली बारी मिले सिल्वर ओक्स के लॉन्स में, तो इनकी शक्ल को देख करके, इनकी अल्फाज जो इन्होंने बोले उस टाइम पे, और जिस मोहब्बत से ये आगे बढ़े, हमें बहुत ज़्यादा खुशी हुई कि इस उम्र में ये करना चाहते हैं। और उसके अलावा तो हमने कुछ सोचा नहीं और किसी और को ढूंढा नहीं, लेकिन इनके साथ जुड़ गए और आज हम यहाँ तक पहुँचे।
तो मैं अपने दर्शकों को बताना चाहूँगा कि मैं और अशोक बंसल जी हम दोनों सेम ही सोसाइटी में रहते हैं। और एक दिन एक ठंड की दोपहर में मैं ऐसे ही अपने कंधे पर बस्ता लटकाए, ट्राइपॉड हाथ में रख के कुछ शूटिंग की तलाश में अपने घर से निकला और पीछे से एक आवाज़ आई कि हु आर यू, आई वांट टू टॉक टू यू। तो तब से ही आई वाज रियली टेकन अबैक फ्रॉम हिज लाइफ इंस्टेंसेस एंड ही हैज़ बीन एन इंस्पिरेशन फॉर मी। एंड जो इन्होंने किस्से अपने ज़िंदगी के बताए वो इतने खूबसूरत थे कि ये कॉन्वर्सेशन करने पे मैं खुद मजबूर हुआ।
तो देखिए, आगे देखते हैं कि आगे कहाँ तक ये सिलसिला पहुँचता है। अभी बहुत दूरी है जहाँ हम कौस्तुभ को अपने साथ ले जाना चाहते हैं।
As we settle down, let's shift gears and talk about a deeply personal chapter of your life, your health journey. In your book, you have opened up about your experience with septicemia and the profound impact it had on your outlook. Can you walk us through what that time period was like for you, both physically and mentally?
Yeah, first of all, I would say I had never heard the term septicemia in my life. The understanding of septicemia came to me essentially that it is a situation, a life-threatening situation, medical condition, when your entire blood gets infected. It can happen in many ways, but the simplest way it happened with me was that I scratched my right foot a little too much. It could have been just an insect, or it could have been my derma, which was overplaying. But never mind. As we were having a normal, casual weekly day that we have with the family, I was feeling a little discomfort, and I called for closing the evening a little earlier than normal. Thereafter, the next day, my temperature went up very high, and my family got very concerned, and they called for the neighborhood doctor. The guy who came up looked at me, saw my temperature, whatever else, and he said, "You must stop all medicines that you're taking right now. I will prescribe some new ones." We were quite taken aback with what he was saying, but we let it pass. The next morning, my temperature was very high, and the family decided that we should move into the hospital. I found myself facing the emergency ward, the set of doctors and the attendants who immediately put me in the ICU. And they had a very concerned look on their face. And after that, it is a little bit of a blur over the next 10, 12, 13 days that it was. It was moving from one procedure to another, one kind of a symptom to another, and they're not being able to tell me anything, but my family was looking extremely concerned all this time. Finally, a day came when they were told, or my family tells me later on, they were told that, look, this is the end, we cannot do anything more for Ashok Bansal. You can take him home. But there was a doctor who was part of the panel who cropped up and said, I know I have done this with somebody else. I would like to try embolization with this particular patient, which essentially means that if you have a vein in your lower stomach, they cut it from the side so that the bleeding stops and you get sorted out, but the chances are only 5%. Never mind, my family signed those papers, including myself, and he completed the procedure. That procedure came through positively, and there was a complete turnaround from that moment. I started recovering my health, and I was discharged 48 hours after that. Now, that is septicemia for me.
So, is Doran, were there any emotional setbacks?
Well, quite clearly that way. I mean, this is the first time one had been through such a number of procedures all in one hospital visit. I could see my family emotionally very, very adversely affected, as one would say, but they would not convey anything to me. The doctors would not tell me too much. And what I had to do was to depend upon myself. In that process, I had a lot of time to think what is going to happen to me, what is happening to me, will life or will God or will my faith give me a second chance? And I lived with those emotions all the 13 days I was at the hospital.
So, Mr. Bansal, अब जैसे कॉफ़ी चली रही है, एक सवाल पूछ सकता हूँ मैं?
क्यों नहीं?
How young are you?
मैं आपसे पूछता हूँ, एक गेस्ट लगाइए.
Not a day more than 70.
Okay, how about you, Sukhi?
I'll take 70 plus, safer bet.
Well, let me surprise you both. I am 82. Okay?
Not possible.
Yeah?
No, not possible.
Okay, let me say that age is never a number.
It is just a number.
Huh?
Yeah.
So, as far as age is concerned or any other parameter that you may have, let's say retirement, the government has 65 as a retirement.
Right.
Right? I work even today something like 8 hours a day. Let me take you back a little bit in terms of once I left ICI, I must have been about 53 or 54. When I moved from Bombay to Delhi, and I started my own consultancy, as you may please. And during the initial years, it was a struggle, but everything patched up, and this consultancy flourished. People would walk up to me to take me on as a consultant, both in terms of marketing, because it was a very specialized subject. Specialized to the extent that it was specialty chemicals, specialty performance chemicals, if you may, please. Now let me explain what performance in here means. When a chemical is used, it must perform a particular duty, right? It could give you softness, it could give you, let us say, immunity to something. So to that extent, it is a specialty chemical. And I, on my own, developed this business with a colleague of mine from ICI. And we joined hands later on with a Gujarati family in Ahmedabad. And we have been traveling the world over. And I am now a global consultant. I am a global consultant in this area for several of these chemical companies.
Oh.
Yeah. So, not that I spend my time 9 to 5 or any time, but whatever time I spend, I remain busy in terms of and earning money, if you may please, at the same time, you know. So that's where I am in terms of my retirement. I remain a student. I will continue to remain a student. During this period of having changed courses, what has happened is not only the academics has appealed me, but developing yourself. More than developing yourself, discovering yourself. And in the process, falling in love with yourself. It's a term which I use rather often and needs a little bit of an explanation. When you say you fall in love, I say the word, every individual tries to have somebody that one loves, right? May it be a woman, may it be a girl, may it be many other things that is there. But if you can't love yourself, I think you can't love anybody else. That's the fundamental premise of this. Number two, you must have respect for yourself, within yourself, that what you are doing is above board. You must look at the mirror every morning and say, yes, I'm proud of this guy who's on the other side of the mirror, rather than any other alternative that you may have. So these are some of the things which have led me on to work, look after my family, from very difficult times in between when I left the company to where I am today. Yeah. So I would say that retirement is never a word that is there.
Do you believe everybody deserves a second chance in their lives?
Because it's not a question of deserving. It is inevitable. If you look at from morning till evening, morning till the end of the year, or your lifespan to where you are now, you would have been through, if you reflect back, number of things that have happened to you. And by your manipulating your softer selves, your softer powers, you have managed to come out of it and give yourself a second chance. Yeah? You also do not know which person next to you is going through which second chance of his. Right? And without a second chance, it means, in simple words, living a straight line life. Yeah? You get up in the morning, don't do anything else except what you want to do in the next 10 hours.
Right.
Go to sleep and do what it is. I mean, nothing, no determination of solving any issues, no determination of experiencing anything. The rest of the world, you're a zombie, as one would say. So second chances are inevitable. It's a question of how you bring yourself to handle those second chances and come out a winner each time.
So what challenges did you face while writing the book, and how did you overcome them?
See, I have never been a writer. In terms of my English language, I did fairly well in both senior Cambridge. After that, there was no requirement for this. I was more easy in terms of my speech rather than writing. The idea of writing a book first never came to me all these life, except when I was in the hospital. Thereafter, it came from the fact that I wanted to leave a legacy behind for my family. How does one leave a legacy behind? By photographs, some other media which is there. I thought to myself, let me write my experiences in terms of where and how I did what, and how I reached my final goal. All right? And that is what I took upon myself to do, to write this book. Now, the initial thought of a book then converted itself into the script writing. It has taken me a journey of 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah. First of all, collecting all the thoughts in your mind, putting them in a particular order, looking at the language all by myself without any help, and thereafter, talking to or collecting certain other connected media. Finally, it was about 3 years or 2.5 years back when I told my family that I am intending to create a memoir, and we needed a publisher. We needed somebody professionally to guide me. Having said that, we located a person, a lady, who said, yes, I will support your publishing. Okay. It started from there, and my final edit that is there must be my 8th edit.
All right.
From the first one to the 8th, done both professionally as well as by myself, as well as portions with my family. And finally, I think only yesterday, I got the final script in the PDF format, which says this is going to be the final book. Only the layout is pending now. Here I am.
And जब आपने अपने फैमिली के साथ ये डिस्कस किया that I'm writing this book when life gives you a second chance, so उनका क्या इस पर रिएक्शन था?
Well, it was mixed. to the extent that there has never been an author in the family, and a larger family. Number two, exposing yourself in terms of what the family and its values has been and how the family has moved from where to here. It was a difficult one, but it required convincing, and it all came from the fact that it will put you into a unique position
Right.
of having left your memoirs. You know, most people have that desire that the next generation and the next generation has something to hold on to. Here was their opportunity.
Right.
So I convinced them to do that.
In your journey, especially during challenging times like your battle with septicemia, how did turning to your inner faith guide you?
Well, septicemia is such a life-threatening disease that one picks up. It is nothing but yourself that you can rely on. Why? Because in any hospital, any situation like that, you are only going from one procedure, one kind of treatment, sedation, and you have very little time to yourself, but those times are extremely trying. Either you are looking for one kind of a comfort or you're looking for an emotional kind of a comfort. In my case, it was lack of water. The hospital would not allow me to drink water during that time. And one would be parched like a man in desert not having water. I would really look forward, look at the watch, when is the next 1 hour when I will get a spoonful of water. And what I would rely on at that time was only yourself. You are nobody else. Your own thoughts, your family, your brothers, your sisters. But ultimately, what came to my rescue was my faith in Guruji. What I would do, he guided me at that point of time to start counting 1 to 500. Now 500 to 1 backwards, and keep doing it till you didn't exhaust yourself out of boredom or whatever, and you went back to sleep. See? So some of these things are difficult to explain, but they come and occur to you at that point of time as your relief, as your strength, as your companion, and to help you to pass your most difficult times.
If you could go back and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, I was born a Leo, and I would study the forecasts and the traits of a Leo in the magazines that would come around, and some of those values left an impression upon me. Secondly, my entire school group that was there, for instance, the classes that we grew up to the senior Cambridge almost remained the same, being day scholars. There was so much of outdoor life, there's so much of sports in there, and so much of adventure, like we would go into the Corbett Park and pick up an air gun from one of our friends who had that and shoot at a murgi, let's say,
Okay.
or a flying bird. And we would come home with 2 or 3 of these to cook and eat kind of thing, Or we would drive up or cycle up certain distances. Once we just decided to cycle up to Delhi. And the 2 of us came in 16 hours, if you may please, in one day. Now, those were the positive values which were imbibed in my school. Honesty and sincerity of purpose was done in the classroom. The English prayers leave you behind with only looking at Christ, unfortunately, as the holy God. But never mind, that was again imbibed on you. And those are some of the things which I would say the youngsters today need to look at rather than what's happening today. The multifaceted exposure that you have today is taking away not only the family values or the opportunity for imbibing those family values, but it's filling them up with things which are mythical, which have no meaning whatsoever, as one would say, no value. There is no opportunity even for imbibing those values from your individual parents, because there is so much of rush on your time, so much of rush on your mind, that you fail to get an opportunity to learn something which will take you forward. I would say that in my case, I was fortunate. I lived all my years as a day scholar at home up to senior Cambridge. When I came to Delhi, half my family was living at the gate of IIT Delhi.
Okay.
So I had a very, very unique living thereafter. And when I went to ICI in Bombay, when I started, we also had a part of the family there. So overall, all in all, I would say there has been the immense value of having your family with you, having your earlier values of what you imbibed from your schools, and that made a very rounded personality for you to handle all the second chances. And there have been many, many in my case. Thank you.
How did your schooling in Dehradun influence your values and aspirations?
Because as far as the schooling values on you are concerned, clearly it is the most impressionable time of your life, number one. And as St. Joseph's Academy, it upholds very, very sterling values that it inculcates in you. Number two, discipline, dress code, honesty, and sincerity of purpose are some of the things which we were taught all the time, silently or otherwise. Of course, when you have the influence of an international school, like as one would say, because this is run by the Irish brothers, I had something which I held back with me all my schooling time, but it came out now quite recently, and that was that they took away the Indianness in me. That would mean they would punish me if I spoke in Hindi in class.
Okay.
Yeah, I would be knuckle dusted, as one would say, or made to stand in a corner if I was found talking in Hindi. Number two, even the dress code that we had, we used to have the very English blazer, grey trousers, tie, all these kind of things that is there, and nothing Indian about it, whereas these are very important values as you grow up later on. But be as it may, one has caught up with that, having had this disadvantage as well, and now you live like a proper Indian. Of course, you do think in English, right? You can't think in Hindi anymore now. You can't think any other way other than think in English. That's the way it is.
कभी ऐसा वो एक सेंस ऑफ रिग्रेट फील हुआ आपको कि मेरी अपनी जो मातृभाषा है उससे मेरा टच कहीं जाने लगा है?
Very clearly, but far too late in life.
Okay.
I had the second layer of a totally British company where I worked. So this became even more inculcated in me. But once I came on my own, I realized how important it is to feel an Indian whilst you are an Indian.
If you could go back and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, I was born a Leo, and I would study the forecasts and the traits of a Leo in the magazines that would come around. And some of those values left an impression upon me. Secondly, my entire school group that was there, for instance, the classes that we grew up to the senior Cambridge almost remained the same, being day scholars. There was so much of outdoor life. There's so much of sports in there. And so much of adventure, like we would go into the Corbett Park and pick up an air gun from one of our friends who had that and shoot at a murgi, let's say, or a flying bird. And we would come home with 2 or 3 of these to cook and eat kind of thing, Or we would drive up or cycle up certain distances. Once we just decided to cycle up to Delhi. And the 2 of us came in 16 hours, if you may please, in one day. Now, those were the positive values which were imbibed in my school. Honesty and sincerity of purpose was done in the classroom. The English prayers leave you behind with only looking at Christ, unfortunately, as the holy god, but never mind, that was again imbibed on you. And those are some of the things which I would say the youngsters today need to look at rather than what's happening today. The multifaceted exposure that you have today
Right.
is taking away not only the family values or the opportunity for imbibing those family values, but it's filling them up with things which are mythical, which have no meaning whatsoever, as one would say, no value. There is no opportunity even for imbibing those values from your individual parents, because there is so much of rush on your time, so much of rush on your mind, that you fail to get an opportunity to learn something which will take you forward. I would say that in my case, I was fortunate. I lived all my years as a day scholar at home up to senior Cambridge. When I came to Delhi, half my family was living at the gate of IIT Delhi.
Okay.
So I had a very, very unique living thereafter. And when I went to ICI in Bombay, when I started, we also had a part of the family there. So overall, all in all, I would say there has been the immense value of having your family with you, having your earlier values of what you imbibed from your schools, and that made a very rounded personality for you to handle all the second chances. And there have been many, many in my case.
तो जब रेडियो पर राज कपूर जी की आवारा फिल्म का गाना मैं आवारा हूँ, वो चक्रौता से शिमला के ट्रैक के बीच उस चाय की टपरी पर जब आपको सुनाई दिया, यू नो, आई वॉज रियली इंट्रीग्ड बाय द चैप्टर 2, अ सेकंड चांस चक्रौता टू शिमला ट्रैक. Could you share what inspired this chapter and the experiences that stood out during this trek? And was there a particular moment that defined the theme of Life Gives You a Second Chance?
Sure, Costa. My school days were a lot of fun, outdoor life, and a love for the mountains naturally coming from the valley town of Dehradun. In my first year at IIT Delhi, we had just started the mountaineering and trekking club, and I thought to myself, this particular autumn, let's go for a trek. I borrowed some equipment from there, like the usual tent and sleeping bags and water bottles and stuff like that. Added some more from the house. And I asked Kuldeep, I said, would you be interested? And he immediately said, yes, let's do that. The next question that we had on our mind was, where should we go? We were very familiar with going up to Mussoorie, but something happened at that point of time, and his army background, we thought, let's go to Chakrota. Let's go to Simla from there, right? Being an army hill station. And the funny part was, and what intrigued us, was that this was not open to the foreigners.
Okay.
It was completely a sealed kind of a hill station. So it was immediately decided that we will go from Chakrota, we'll go to Simla. Then what we did, we just started off, took the bus for the first 40 kilometers, and thereafter we started trekking. The moment we touched that Chakrota, there was such an air of aroma, of the deodars. Mm-hmm. You could hear the waterfalls, like the roar of a tiger. Yeah, and the whole thing was very pleasant. We had 2 very pleasant nights in terms of our trek and our adventure, when we pitched our tents and we enjoyed meeting the local people and understanding what was on the other side of the mountains. On the 3rd evening, we had just checked into a guest house, a dilapidated guest house, and we went in to the famous tuck shop that was there, where the Avara song was playing. It was not the song which intrigued us. We were too tired for that matter. Yeah. But we sat down, sipping our tea, understanding what was happening, talking loudly about our adventure, what we had been through. And there was this gentleman who was sitting next to us in his khaki military uniform. And he stood up and came and said, I'm from the security forces, and we have information that you have been paradropped. And that took the wind out of us.
Must have.
Yeah. And of course, the initial reaction was maybe somebody is just joking or something. But when we got into a little more serious conversation, he says, sorry, I will not let you move from here. You have to prove your identity. So we said, okay, we are students from Dehradun, so there is no issue about it. And I also have permission from the district magistrate to be going through this. He says, show it to me. I said, come along. And we went to the room. As soon as we went into the room, he locked the door, he stripped us to the bone and showed us the piece of paper that we were talking about, the letter. He says, buddies, this has been forged. Because there is no stamp of the government. That is what makes it a complete paper. Right? He said, okay, we kept repeating to him that we are students from St. Joseph's. And he said, look, okay, then speak to your father and tell me I'll be able to talk to him. I said, fine, that's another opportunity. We felt a little relieved. We walked up to the telephone booth, which was a little far away, and I dialed my house number, which was 399. But with the systems being what they are, I got connected to 499.
Oh my God.
That was again another setback. And the guy on the other side quickly slammed the phone on my face, saying that, I don't know anybody of that kind. But at that stage, once he had heard us repeat again and again, and with the sincerity on our face, he understood a little intelligently that, yes, okay. He said, do one thing, I will let you go now, but once you are back in Dehradun, I want you to call me up on this number so that I can close this case and understand that you are innocent students. Thereafter is really history. We ran out of the guest house the next morning and didn't look back just in case he changed his mind. So that is how Chakrata Simla was getting us back on the second chance, as one would say.
इस पूरे incident का, you told your family about it? You got paradropped in Chakrata?
Well, yes, when I came back, and everybody was surprised, and they in fact blamed the officer. They said, you never looked, neither your looks nor anything else described you to be a person who can be dropped, paradropped, and with what intent. So I think it was a laugh at the end of the day.
And then how was Shimla?
Well, Shimla was as usual. We have been there a couple of times. Once our intent was to go over the mountains. Shimla was well known to Kaka as well as me.
Right.
So it wasn't anything new.
So is there any favorite food spot of you and your friend Kaka in the Mall Road of Shimla?
We did not go to Mall Road, quite honestly. We were picked up by his parents.
Okay.
Almost hours after we reached there. And sort of, as I said, we just came back home.
So, Dehradun pahunch ke, did you call the officer?
Oh yes, you bet. Both had to do that. Otherwise things could have gone, I would say, seriously awry.
And then what was his reaction when you dialed his number?
Well, he was laughing on the other side, quite frankly. He says, yes, I knew, but I did not know. So I had to close my case having done what I had done with you. I didn't know what was your background. You could have lashed back at me as well,